30 seconds.
Thank you very much.
That's a great background. I want this one. Is that a library?
Now, you are on the air now.
Good evening. I want to call this meeting of the Durham City Council to order at 7 o'clock on December the 21st, 2020. And I certainly want to welcome everyone here tonight, my colleagues, members of the staff, others who are attending the meeting, and anyone who's listening to it at home. We're so glad to have you with us. Before we have the moment of silent meditation tonight, I wanted to just share a little something. W.H. Auden, the great English poet, wrote a poem called September 1st, 1939. It was written just a few weeks into World War II after Germany had invaded Poland. And it was a very dark time. And it made me think, not that this time is as bad as World War II, I don't want to get that mixed up, but it has been a difficult time this year with the COVID virus and so many things that have come from that. So I thought I would read this little passage at the end of Auden's poem before our moment of silence. Defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them of eros and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame. So let's all show our affirming flame tonight and in the months to come, and we'll all get through this together. So will you now please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. All right. Councilmember Reese, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, colleagues, staff, and Durham residents watching at home. I will now say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Stuhl,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Here.
Councilmember Caballero,
Here.
Councilmember Freelon, Councilmember Freeman,
Present.
Councilmember Middleton,
Here.
Councilmember Reese.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now I'll ask, are there any announcements by members of the council? Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a number of announcements before I go. I studied that Auden poem in college, and it honestly didn't make much of an impression on me then. But on the Saturday morning after the September 11 attacks in 2001, NPR's Steve Inskeep read a portion of that poem aloud on Morning Edition on Saturday. And it's remained as part of my memory of that time in our communal lives ever since. And so I got a little bit emotional when you read that portion of it because it's very, very meaningful to me personally. So thank you for doing that. First of all, I wanted to say that the good news is there are vaccines and they have arrived in Durham. It's my understanding that the Durham Health Department received its first shipment of the Moderna vaccine earlier today. Is being prioritized for inoculation for Durham residents as part of the plan developed by public health experts, both here in Durham and statewide. look forward to seeing more folks getting the vaccine in the weeks and months ahead. As you know, Mr. Mayor, it's really, really important that the vaccine be prioritized first to our frontline workers who are in contact with members of the general public. That is both public employees and private employees. The elderly, folks with health conditions that qualify them, and also for our more vulnerable populations. And so just want to encourage everyone to know that the broad swath of American leaders that you've seen being vaccinated over the last several days should be a signal to everyone that these vaccines are safe and effective. And I certainly intend to be vaccinated when it's my turn in line. But I did want to make sure that folks know that I will not, certainly will not be jumping the line in front of folks who need it far more than I do. As this pandemic has shown, I think a lot of folks in our situation can deal with the kind of the isolation that we need to do because we can do our jobs remotely. A lot of folks can't, and so those folks should be ahead of us enough. So I'll be. I have absolutely no concerns about taking the vaccine, but I'll do it when I'm satisfied that enough other folks have gotten it, that our community is a safer place. Second announcement I wanted to make is that additional help is on the way from the federal government. Very soon, we hope that the federal Congress will pass a new COVID relief bill into law that will provide much needed relief for families across North Carolina, and especially right here in Durham. There are a number of parts to this bill, including transit funding for our Durham transit system here in Durham, the additional federal funds for individuals and families, although it is a very, very tiny amount of money, unfortunately, and support for rental assistance, support for additional small business support, and support for our live stage venues and independent theaters. As part of the Save Our Stages bill got folded into this COVID relief package. And so I know that our staff is busy combing through the almost 6,000-page bill that's making its way through both houses right now and on its way to the president's desk for signature. And I know that we'll have more news about that in the days and weeks ahead. I just wanted to put that on folks' radar as something that is at least a start in helping recover from what is still a devastating pandemic. The third announcement I wanted to make, Mr. Mayor, is that I'm sorry. And I want to apologize and talk about how I intend to do better as this pandemic continues to unfold. Despite the existence of vaccines, it's going to be a while.
hopefully with the weather. But I think there is life, and I believe as we go into 2021, I'm excited. I'm emboldened and strengthened by the things that are before us as a council, as a government, to do that would start to constitute a substantial and an actual response, pieces of a puzzle being put together to respond to gun violence in our city. I'm looking forward to the violence interruption being brought back before us with actual numbers in January, as our staff said it would. I'm looking forward to the initiatives we're looking at to address root causes coming back before us. I'm saying these things tonight because I want folks during the season to realize that there is light and that we are pushing back against darkness. We are pushing back against hopelessness, and we are not succumbing to it. And that this government is committed to doing concrete, substantive things to push back against the darkness. So with that said, thank you again for the poem, Mr. Mayor. I want to fully associate myself with everything Councilor Caballero said as well with respect to this ongoing pandemic. I share Councilor Reese's excitement about the vaccines coming. I will say that to those of us who have been hurt before in a number of ways, and given the United States of America's medical history, particularly people of color, Black people in this country, but I hope that we will find the courage and strength.
Has said that DTN is working on audio for the social media platforms. Oh, I said she means they're working on it. I see. Not that it works, but that they're working on it. Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, well, I suggest everyone order out one of those cocktails while we're waiting.
Well, sadly, they haven't worked out the delivery aspect yet. apparently, smarter people than I am have reviewed the executive order, and you can get a delivered cocktail, one cocktail per person, and both people have to be there when the delivery person hands them off. So you can't just sit at home and say, I have 10 people in my apartment. I need 10 old fashions right now, please. That doesn't work. Now, in order to do that, the drivers are going to have to some training to figure out, probably check IDs and whatnot. And the drivers have to be over 21 or older. And I suspect they haven't figured out how to deploy that training yet. So it might be a little while before we get the delivery part working. But hopefully some of our establishments can get some curbside options available, because that would be ideal.
Right. This just happened today, right?
And we
Earlier
should be good to
today.
go.
The governor signed it this afternoon. It went into
All
effect at
right,
5 p.m.
we're good to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. 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 All right, thanks.
Colleagues, I think while we're waiting for this, I see no harm in going ahead with the priority items. I think that's next on our agenda, so I think we'll go ahead and do that. And first I'll call on our city manager. Madam Manager, any priority items tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. We do have several priority items for your consideration this evening. Agenda item number 5, Department of Water Management, Miss Lake Facility Expansion Design Services, Stantec Architecture Incorporated, Amendment number 5. There's additional information that has been provided, and it is in attachment number 4. Agenda item number 6, the Williams Water Treatment Plant paving, construction award to SA Hauling and Utilities, Limited Liability Company, doing business as Creative Concrete Construction. There's additional information that has been provided, and it is in attachment number 7. Agenda item number 19, Consolidated Annexation, Carrington Woods 2, motion number 3 and attachment 20 were updated. Attachment 18 was also updated. Agenda item number 20, Consolidated Annexation 924 Old Oxford Road, attachment number 14 was added, and attachments number 11 and 13 were updated. Agenda item number 21, Consolidated Annexation 551 Olive Branch Road, motion number 4 and attachment 18 were both updated, and attachment number 16 was updated. And finally, agenda item number 22, Consolidated Annexation 4115 Angier Avenue, attachment number 9 was added, and attachment number 1 was updated.
Thank you very much, Madam Manager. Madam Attorney, are there any priority items tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of City Council. It's good to see you all. The City Attorney's Office does not have any priority items this evening.
Thank you, Madam Attorney.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, any priority items tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Madam Mayor Pro Tem and council members. The City Clerk's office has no priority items, and I did want to let you know that the social media stream is up.
Great.
Up and running.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That's the
You're welcome.
news we were hoping for.
Okay.
All right, great. Colleagues, we're now going to move into the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of items previously worked on by the council and can be approved by a single vote of the council. Items can be pulled from the consent agenda by members of the public or members of the council, and if pulled, will be heard at the end of the meeting. I'll now read the consent agenda. Item 1, Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority Mayor's nominee for reappointment. I'm going to pull that item from consent. Item 2, Safety and Wellness Task Force appointments. Item 3, discussion of the Workers' Bill of Rights as written by the Durham Workers' Rights Commission. Item 4, interlocal agreement with Go Triangle to reimburse the City of Durham for technical services related to commuter rail. Item 5, Department of Water Management, Miss Lake Facility Expansion Design Services, Stantec Architecture Incorporated, Amendment Number 5. Item 6, Williams Water Treatment Plant Paving Construction awarded to SA Hauling and Utilities Limited Liability Company doing business as Creative Concrete Construction. Item 7, Water Plant Residuals, excuse me, and Wastewater Plant Biosolid Services Contract with Sinagro Central LLC. Item 8, Contract for Insurance Broker Services. Item 9, Cooperative Group Purchase Contract, 5 Automated Refuse Collection Vehicles. Item 10, Cooperative Group Purchase Contract, Police Patrol Vehicles. Item 11, Contract with Cleggs Termite and Pest Control LLC for Pest Control Services. Item 12, Contract with Godwin Elevator Company, Inc. for elevator maintenance and repair services. Item 13, City of Durham Employment and Training 2018 to 20, Grant Project Ordinance, superseding Project Grant Ordinance 15613. Item 14, 2020 Blue Benevolence Grant Project Ordinance. Item 15, the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance 2020 National Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, SAKI Program Grant Project Ordinance. Item 16, expansion of fiber optic network agreement with Duke University, construct the Durham Housing Authority campus network. Those are the items in the consent agenda, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 1.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freeman, seconded by Councilmember Caballero. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll? Call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We'll now move to our general business agenda, public hearings, and the first item is a consolidated annexation for Carrington Woods 2.
Hey, good evening, Mayor Schul, Madam Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, honorable council members. Alexander Cahill here with the Planning Department. I'm happy to be here with you tonight. I do want to state for the record that all Planning Department hearing items tonight have been advertised and noticed in accordance with state and local law, and that affidavits of all these notices are on file in the Planning Department. For Carrington Woods 2, we've received a request for a utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, future land use map amendment, and zoning map change from Glenwood Homes LLC for an area of 8.56 acres made up of 20 single-family detached residential units. This is around 833 Clayton Road. The annexation petition is for a contiguous expansion of the corporate city limits. Glenwood Homes is proposing to change the zoning designation from residential suburban 20 to residential suburban 10. The development plan associated with this request proposes a maximum of 20 single-family detached residential units, which is an increase of 8 units compared to the existing zoning. The area is currently designated low-density residential in the future land use map. If approved, this annexation petition and associated applications would become effective on December 31st, 2020. The applicant has proffered for construction of an off-site sidewalk prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy within the existing right-of-way on Clayton Road and along the west side of the existing sidewalk south of Meadowcrest Drive to Glen Rose Drive. The maximum number of housing units was revised from 23 to 20 in text commitment number 2 on the development plan. The landscape buffer was revised from 10 feet in some places to 25 feet in text commitment number 3 on the development plan. These proffers have been reviewed by the transportation and planning departments and found to be legal and enforceable. City and county operational departments such as solid waste, fire, and EMS have reviewed this request and have not identified any significant negative service delivery cost or impacts to the city. Public Works and Water Management Departments also have performed the utility impact analysis for the utility extension agreement and have determined that existing City of Durham water and sanitary sewer mains do have capacity to serve this project. So staff is recommending 3 motions for this application. The first is to adopt an ordinance annexing the property and entering into a utility extension agreement. The second is to adopt a consistency statement. And the third is for a zoning ordinance. Thank you very much. Staff and the applicant are available here tonight for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cahill. Mr. Cahill, did I miss it, or did you also already indicate in your comments that these have been appropriately advertised?
Yes, I opened up with that. Thank you for double checking.
Thank you very much. You have heard the report from staff. I'm now going to declare this public hearing open. And I'm going to first ask if there are any questions for staff by members of the council. All right, seeing none, there are 2 people that are signed up to speak on this item. One of them is Penny Sicadio, and the other is Garrick Sevilla. Let me ask, are those 2 people here with us? Madam Clerk, do you happen to know Penny Sicadio? I'm sorry if I've got that name right, and Garrick Sevilla.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, both are in attendance.
All right, great. Is there anyone else, let me ask now, that would like to be heard on this item? If you were here tonight to be heard on this item, and I'm not aware of that or did not call your name, if you could please put that information in the chat or raise your virtual hand so that the clerk can identify you. I don't see any other hands up, but if there are any, please let us know. I see that both, I believe now it's Ms. Sicadlo. It's perhaps the correct, Sicadlo is perhaps the correct pronunciation. I see that the 2 speakers are both proponents. So I'm going to call on Ms. Sicadlo first, and you have 3 minutes, and then we'll follow that with Garrick Sevilla. Ms. Sicadlo, welcome.
Yes, thank you. My name is Penny Sicadlo. I'm the principal engineer of Penny Engineering Design at 9220 Fairbanks Drive in Raleigh, North Carolina. This project has been before you once before, and we heard concerns that we needed to attach a development plan to it. We have attached a development plan, and as you heard, it has been modified from our review from the Planning Commission and with our discussion with the neighbors. We tried desperately to meet all the criteria of safety and traffic and privacy that we could with the neighbors' concerns and with the comments we heard from the Planning Commission. I think that I'm very proud of the fact that this particular client has agreed to make a connection of the sidewalk to the existing Southern High School. I think that was a concern of the neighbors, and I'm very proud to find a way to make that happen for the neighborhood and willingness of this development to perform that task. We have reduced the number of lots to 20 lots, and we have offered a rather substantial 25-foot landscape buffer on the entire perimeter of this project in an attempt to offer some privacy to the existing development. I think this will be a very good, consistent development with the existing neighborhood. The lots are of the same zoning, of the same size, and I think it would be a very good addition to Durham's landscape.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sicadlo. Ms. Sicadlo, I'm going to ask you this question, not for you to answer right now, but before we leave tonight. What is the approximate length of the off-site sidewalk that's being proffered? And what would you say the approximate cost to construct that will be? So I'll just leave that question with you, and I'll go on to Mr. Garrick Sevilla.
That's fine. I'll do a measurement and get you an answer.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Garrick Sevilla. I'm the attorney for Glenwood Homes. Some of what I'm going to say is going to retread some of what Ms. Cadlow had said. This is Carrington Woods 2. There was a Carrington Woods 1, which was the first iteration of these consolidated petitions. The City Council denied Carrington Woods 1 about 2 years ago now, in December of 2018. Unlike the present consolidated petitions, that was a straight zoning change from our RS20 to RS10. And at the time, the council had expressed a desire for Glenwood to further engage and conduct outreach with the neighboring residents. We heard that. We went back to the drawing board, and instead of a straight rezoning, we decided to submit a development plan that would support the specific residential subdivision we envisioned building. And we committed to act with just complete transparency with the neighboring residents. And so within days of submitting the first draft of the development plan, we convened an in-person meeting at the nearby Durham Public Library in September 2019. So this was pre-COVID. And we also shared a sketch of the subdivision plan that we expect to submit if annexation and rezoning are approved. We provided hard copies of these documents with all of our mailed notices, and we also provide electronic copies to any of the residents that gave us their email address. And like Penny said, the main concerns really centered on traffic through the existing neighborhoods. We are interconnecting through existing neighborhoods, so there will be some uptick in traffic. The residents also expressed concerns around privacy, and then also the safety of pedestrians along Clayton Road, particularly the students of Southern High School who walk along Clayton Road and through the wooded areas. And one of our main goals throughout this process was really to win the support of the residents, to earn their support. And we had multiple Zoom meetings and follow-up to the initial meeting at the public library. And as a result of this back and forth, we made the changes to the initial development plan that Penny outlined. The reduction in dwellings from 23 to 20 is significant and will mitigate, some of the traffic through the existing neighborhoods. And then also the 25-foot project boundary will provide privacy. One of the concerns we heard throughout was, the safety of pedestrians on Clayton Road. And there was a lot of frustration that the residents expressed with what they see as neglect of that road, of improvements on that road. And again, for the high school students, who walk to that school, even though this project of ours is just 20 homes, we wanted to step up and be part of the solution to the extent we were able. And we wanted to, set an example for other developers who wish to build in this area. So we added the sidewalk text commitment, as Mr. Cadlow discussed. We hoped all of these, these changes to the plan would win the support of residents before the Planning Commission in September. Unfortunately, we didn't, but we were very encouraged to receive the almost unanimous recommendation endorsement of the Planning Commission. There was just one vote against. And so tonight, we're similarly hopeful that the council will recognize our efforts to address the residents' concerns and vote to approve the consolidated petitions. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sevilla. I see that there's another person that would like to speak on this item, and that is Quincy Ratcliffe. Is Quincy Ratcliffe available to be heard?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, and welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. But I agree with everything Attorney Sevilla has stated. And Ms. Penny, they have met with us on previous occasions and tried to accommodate our requests. Our concerns are the safety of this area, and they have tried to hear us and they have tried to assist us. And yes, our problem is still safety with the amount of pedestrians that use public transportation, the neighbors who walk and exercise. We do not have sidewalks. Clayton Road is unsafe. It's only a 2-lane road. Whenever you're walking on the street, you have to get onto the grass or whenever cars are approaching. And not just that, but Twin Lakes, when they build those 20 homes, their Woodland Park Road is now going to serve not just Twin Lakes, Carrington, Woods, but it's also going to serve another new subdivision that's being built at the end. And there is nothing being done to address our safety issues. So yes, we are concerned with the amount of safety that's not being addressed, somewhat by them, but nothing by the city. We're concerned with the noise level, the loss of wildlife, the ability to exercise safely. We don't have that. So I do like the plan. I can speak specifically for me. I do like the plan that they just presented with the 20 homes and adding the 25 feet buffers. Yes, that is a better plan than what they previously presented. So, but those are my concerns at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Radcliffe.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else that would like to be heard on this item? If you're here and you would like to be heard on this item, please put your name in the chat or raise your virtual hand. Let me just check and make sure that we don't have anyone else who would like to be heard. All right. All right, colleagues, you have heard the speakers tonight. We'll begin now with any questions or comments you may have. But first, I'm going to ask Ms. Cadlow if she could answer the question that I asked previously.
Yes, I did look it up. It is about 450 feet of sidewalk, and building it along an existing right-of-way would cost in the neighborhood of $18,000.
Thank you very much. All right. Colleagues, any questions or comments at this point for the applicant or for staff? All right. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. And just in light of the comments that were made, I just want to make sure that the staff does address how safety is being addressed in that area in regards to pedestrians specifically.
Mr. Cahill, can you address that, please?
Yeah, I can. That's a great question, and I can address it to the best of my ability. In terms of safety, the sidewalk that's being proffered is in addition along Clayton Road, as portrayed on the development plan. It's one way to address safety. In terms of the rest of the development plan, there aren't commitments that address, crime prevention through environmental design or anything at this level. However, when you get to the site plan level and level of specificity there are other ways to address safety concerns. In terms of an overarching approach from, planning's perspective, this is just one project in the area, and we can't require them to do a lot of the things within the UDO ordinance. So the applicant is proffering the sidewalk at their own behest, at their own financial burden. Unfortunately, that's the best answer I can give at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cahill. It might be helpful to hear from Mr. Judge specifically on project might be occurring in this area.
Yes, thank you. So there is a funded bike walk plan from the 2017 bike walk implementation for a small segment of sidewalk on Clayton and Freeman Road from Chandler Road to Obsidian Way. It's all along one side of Clayton, one side of Freeman, and then a crossing. It was primarily intended to help get folks from the existing neighborhood a little bit south of this development along Woodland Park Drive and Chandler Road, access to Southern High School. So that project is in right-of-way acquisition now. So in finishing up, hopefully we'll go to construction sometime in 2021. Beyond that, I mean, yeah, we've heard from Ms. Ratcliffe and a number of the other neighbors out here. We do know there's a large need for a large number of sidewalks in this general vicinity, whether that's Clayton, Chandler, Cheek Road, Ross Road, Junction Road. There's a long list of large number of needs, but we're trying to work through them.
Thank you, Mr. Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Judge, and thank you, Council Member. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a general comment that projects like these, which are, very low density, small single family developments, are pretty easy. And when developers spend time talking to community members, they often end up being even less dense than they were before. And I think this is an example where the developer removed several units at the behest of the community. And while I think it is really important to, to work with community members and to be in communication with them, I also just wanted to recognize that the way in which that is happening now is in many cases leading to us getting less housing when the community broadly needs more housing and more dense housing. And when developers come with proposals for these kinds of single family developments, there's typically very little opposition in contrast to the townhome developments that we've been seeing lately, which are more dense, though perhaps not as dense as would be. More dense would, of course, be more sustainable, but they are denser than what we're getting now and are often much more difficult for developers to push through and get a lot more community opposition. And I don't know how to solve this problem. I just wanted to highlight it as a tension that I continue to see in our development cases, that the broader needs of our community in terms of more dense, more affordable housing are not being served by the process that we're using now, and that often the things that we're asking developers to do actually create even more problems for that broad goal. And it's not unique to Durham. I think it's common across the country that any more density gets opposition from neighbors who live in less dense housing. But contrasting this to the townhome development that we had at our last meeting with dozens of people speaking in opposition, I just worry that we're not getting what we need with our current process. That being said, I'm going to vote for this item. Thanks.
Thank you, Council Member. Colleagues, I think if unless you have some particular need to, before we continue with our comments, unless there's anyone from the council who objects, I'm going to go ahead and close this hearing. Is there anyone who has a problem with that at this point? And then we'll have our comments. All right, I'm going to declare this public hearing closed. The matters before the council.
I saw my hand. I know it's a no.
Oh, okay. Apologies.
Just a quick question for staff.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
In light of Mayor Pro Tem's comment, and I'm not sure if Sarah is prepared, but just noting that, is there a plan in place for moving forward with some small area planning so that these, especially in the areas where we're annexing and bringing online additional housing with a 2-lane road, is there any planning in place or is there a plan in place to move forward with some small area planning?
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Sarah Young with the Planning Department. Councilmember Freeman, that is a good question. I will tell you that as part of the comprehensive plan effort, we are looking at a variety of different areas that are experiencing either development pressures, that have particular development challenges. To call it all small area planning in kind of the traditional sense, it'll be a bit different from that. But we do plan to try and address these issues through the development of the comp plan. So I know that's not an immediate answer, but the comp plan is a thoughtful process that will take a little bit of time still in order to hopefully get us on the other side with better policies and plans in place to effectuate the changes that we need to be able to have development that actually works in our community.
And just for verification, is that still like at least 2 to 3 years away? And so we need something in the interim to kind of help counterbalance exactly what Mayor Pro Tem is saying.
So I would say that it's probably at least 2 years away. I will say that we have limited staff resources, and every time we try and do a Band-Aid fix, it will only delay further the overall comp plan. That's already going to somewhat be the case with the Searles project. So just in full transparency. But I think that one of the things that is very possible is that as we develop policies in the comp plan, our plan as staff is to go ahead and implement those in the ordinance so that we're not waiting 2 years before we start making a bunch of changes that actually start hitting the ground with live projects. You will start to see, as we develop policy, accompanying UDO changes, following very closely on the heels of those. So as opposed to past plans where we wait and we draft the whole thing and then at the end we get it adopted, we're essentially going to be adopting it in little chunks as it's being developed to try to get at this very issue.
Thank you. That's all. I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's insightful for the public to hear. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Young, and thank you, Council Member. I'm going to declare this public hearing closed. The matter is now before the council and be interested in your comments. Council Member Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank staff for their work on this project. I want to thank the resident who came to speak about it, and also want to thank the applicant. 2 years ago, almost to the day, 2 years and 3 days ago, this council met and voted against the annexation portion of this project by a vote of 4-3. I was one of the folks who voted against it. The reason I voted against it at the time was that the developer had a lot of good ideas about how to moderate some of the traffic related concerns and pedestrian safety related concerns that the folks who live in and around this area had about the project, but the developer was not willing to proffer a development plan that would allow them to commit to those things. So in the absence of that, it did not make sense to me to move forward with an annexation. And three of my colleagues agreed. Today, 2 years and 3 days later, they have come to us with the development plan that commits them to doing all the things they said they were going to do 2 years ago. With that in hand and acknowledging that the neighbors still have concerns about this project, the Planning Commission voted overwhelmingly to recommend it to us for our approval. The project is essentially a notch that appears carved out of the city jurisdiction that this annexation would bring into the city. And the density that is proposed here, 20 homes on this relatively small piece of property, it would be comparable to the neighborhoods that surround it. And so on those bases, and given the sidewalk improvement and some of the other things, it's my intention to support the annexation when it comes for a vote and the rezone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. Council Member Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilman Reese. Appreciate you bringing back to life the case and how it all shaped out. I think it's important to note that the comments that Quincy Ratcliffe identified haven't changed much of what's happening on Clayton Road, and many of the neighborhoods that are experiencing this development pressure are going to consistently keep coming forward with the issues around traffic, pedestrian safety, and the other. And I think it's important to note that our staff is now prepared to address it in a better way, and acknowledging the chunking of policy changes, and noting that the comprehensive plan is not coming in another couple of years or coming to completion within another couple of years. It makes a huge difference. And the work that we're trying to do, and I know that the joint city county planning staff or planning is moving forward with some of that small area planning conversation, and I'm excited about what's ahead. Also, just to put a kind of pinpoint on the race equity issues that align in this conversation are huge. And if we miss the opportunity to also include kind of an equity statement on how we move forward with these types of development, acknowledging the history of how developments have happened across the country with a lot of the harm caused to people of color, will miss not actually stating why we've had some of the angst or some of the what we've seen in the community or the response in the community, like in the ones that are experiencing this development pressure. I won't call it gentrification because it's different, but this is going forward, this being the types of cases like this are going to continue to come forward, and we have to be very proactive of acknowledging that there has to be specific attention paid to communities that have experienced this development pressure without having planning in place or the resources in place to do the things that need to be done, like adding sidewalks. So in a case like this, where we're annexing the county into the city, acknowledging the costs that's going to be incurred, and then also on the other side of it, the equity issues that might come about in a specific community. There's a lot of details that are going to have to be checks and balances. And I'm hopeful that our council will be mindful of that as we move forward, because it's not the same in every case. And so in different neighborhoods where the push was for it to remain rural, I think we just have a lot more to pay attention to and to be mindful of in each of these cases, because they are not simple. They're very complex. And the layers that are in them include race equity. They include transportation shortfalls and funding. They include the environmental injustice or the environmental hazards that have been in place for areas that have flooded. They include a variety of areas that we have yet to really nail down how we're going to address it. And so I just want to note that I will be in support of the case this evening, but it is in light of our developer actually being mindful of how we need to move forward in this. So thank you.
Thank you, council member. Any further comments? I'll just comment real briefly that the commitment of a lengthy segment of off-site sidewalk is extraordinary, especially for a 20-home development. And I want to appreciate that. And I also want to remember that, because the number of times that I've heard developers come in here and say they can't commit to an off-site sidewalk, we now know that you can commit to an off-site sidewalk. It does raise the price of housing. I think we have to acknowledge that. It's an $18,000 expense. It's going to cost almost $1,000 per unit to do this. So we don't want people doing it all the time, but there are times when we really wanted it. And I just want to say that I appreciate it. In this case, I think it's absolutely right because it does answer, I think, the most significant pedestrian concern that's raised, not just by this development, but by the fact that the existing developments are going to be served by this. The development that Ms. Radcliffe lives in, for example. And finally, this, and I think Councilmember Reese mentioned this, when you see this, this is a wooded area that is surrounded by housing. This not only is going to be developed, but should be developed for this purpose. So I'm definitely supportive and appreciate the comments by my colleagues. All right, Councilmember Freeline.
Yeah, I'll be super brief. I just wanted to say to my colleagues that I appreciate the backstory, because when I'm reading, the Planning Commission comments, Charlie always mentioned how detailed Miller is, and he talked about this coming up in 2018, and I was curious about the backstory. And I don't always have the opportunity to call you and be like, hey, what happened in 2018? So it's been really helpful for me to hear some of the critiques from Mayor Pro Tem, some of the context from you, Mayor Schul, about the sidewalks. It's, as a new council member, I'm just really appreciating the dialogue. You too, colleague Freeman. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you, council member. I think that there's such a big learning curve on these development things when you first get on the council, and I certainly experienced the exact same thing. Not only the ordinances and the technical aspects, but the background, the history of these cases. And I agree with you very much. So I'm glad we're proving ourselves useful. All right, colleagues, we will need 3 motions on this. The first would be the motion to adopt an ordinance annexing Carrington Woods 2 into the city of Durham effective December 30th, 2020, and entering into the utility extension agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, seconded by Councilmember Reese. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. We'll next move to motion 2 to adopt a consistency statement.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freelon, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
thank you. Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. And now we'll move to the third motion to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freelon, seconded by Councilmember Reese. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. I want to thank Ms. Radcliffe for being here and for her comments. I want to thank the applicant, and I want to thank our staff. All right, we'll now move to item 20, Consolidated Annexation 924 Old Oxford Road. And first, we'll hear our report from staff. Welcome again, Mr. Cahill.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, Mayor Schul, Madam Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, honorable council members. I look forward to spending the night with you tonight. We did receive a request for utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, and initial zoning map change for 924 Old Oxford Road, case BDG 200006. This is for one parcel of land totaling about 3.4 acres located at and around 924 Old Oxford Road. This is from individual landowners Celeste Ritchie and Jason Errol. And they are looking for a contiguous expansion of the existing corporate city limits with this annexation petition. The site is presently zoned residential suburban 20. And if this annexation is approved, staff recommends an exact translation of this zoning designation, which means that it would remain residential suburban 20, but in the city limits. If this was approved tonight, it would become effective on December 31st, 2020. The site is presently undeveloped and heavily wooded, and the owners do intend to construct just one single family residence for their own personal residence on the vacant parcel after the site is annexed. City and county departments have reviewed this request and have not identified any significant negative service delivery costs or impacts. Additionally, Public Works and Water Management have performed the utility impact analysis and determined that the existing City of Durham water and sanitary sewer mains do have capacity to serve this project. Budget and Management Services completed a fiscal impact analysis and determined that this proposed annexation will become revenue positive at build out. Additional information related to this can be found in the staff report. So staff is recommending that the City Council approve this utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, and consistency statement for the proposed zoning map change. Staff recommends this approval based on several key findings, which include the contiguous nature of this annexation, the minimal impacts to existing city services, and the revenue positive result found in the fiscal impact analysis. There are three motions that are required for this application. The first is to adopt an ordinance annexing the property and entering into a utility extension agreement with Celeste Ritchie and Jason Errol. The second is to adopt a consistency statement. And the third is for the zoning ordinance itself. Thank you very much for your time. Staff and applicants are also available for any questions this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cahill. Colleagues, you have heard the report from staff. I'm now going to declare this public hearing open, and I'm going to ask if there are any questions by members of the council for staff. But before I do so, I do have one question, Mr. Cahill. I was unable to understand from the annexation map where this parcel touches the city limits?
Yes, I can pull that up for you right now. There we go. Are you able to see that, Mayor Schul?
Yes.
Okay. So the parcel in question is the hashed area. And the contiguous, the city limits are the dash line here.
Okay, great. I see. I missed that map somehow. Thank you. Okay, so we have a very funky parcel here. It includes not just the kind of triangular shape, but it also includes the road going out to Old Axford Highway, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Cahill?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Are we okay with that?
I can defer to Bill Judge on that.
I'm really not talking about the transportation issue. I'm talking about this kind of, I don't have any objections that I can think of, but I wondered, is there anything problematic about annexing this parcel and then having, with this one, very thin line that will be, I'm not sure exactly, a driveway or, yeah. So Ms. Young is coming to help. Ms. Young.
Good evening. So yeah, this is what we would call a flag lot type situation in essence. And it's not uncommon to have these pop up. One of the reasons that in an annexation, we ask all of our partner departments to identify any potential issues is situations like this where there may be an issue, concern, for instance, about confusion along the roadway if there's an emergency call, 911. But there have been no identified issues with this, and because flag lot situations are fairly common, I don't particularly see a concern with this situation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Young. That was what I wanted to know. All right, Councilmember Middleton had a question, and then I see Councilmember Freeman or a comment. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for recognizing me. I don't really have a question. I do want to make a disclosure before we engage in the public hearing. While there's nothing statutorily that constitutes a conflict of interest for me in this hearing, I do want to disclose that the not-for-profit that I serve as Chief Executive Officer of owns a significant piece of land. Actually, it's almost neighbors at the corner of Old Oxford and Thompson. So I did want to disclose that. Again, there's nothing statutorily that constitutes a conflict, but I did want to, just for full transparency, disclose that while not me personally, the organization that I lead is a vested stakeholder in this area. And I think that should be known before we engage in the public hearing. So just wanted to share that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, council member, for that disclosure. And I just want to check in with the city attorney, as I'm sure, Madam Attorney, just to make sure, Councilmember Middleton there's no personal benefit to him in any way accruing in this regard. He is still obligated to vote on this issue. Is that correct?
Yes, my interpretation of the statute.
All right, great. Just wanted to make sure we all were on the same page. Thank you. And thank you, council member. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just following up on your line of question, noting that this is that single road into that flag lot, I just wanted to just get verification that I'm assuming that the property owner is paying for the paving that would occur for this location, so that that lot or that length of street would be paved by the property owner?
So I will, Sarah Young again, I'll let Mr. Cahill correct me if I have misunderstood, but because this is a flag lot, it's not a street, it would be a private driveway. And so yes, it would be the property owner's responsibility to pave their driveway however they saw fit in accordance with the ordinance requirements. Is that correct, Mr. Cahill?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, before we hear from the people who signed up to speak, are there any more questions for staff? All right, then. We've got two people who've signed up to speak. Councilmember Freeman, did you have another question?
Yeah, just to follow up, essentially that streetway would not have like any type of fire hydrants or like no road and gutter. Like I'm trying to get some clarity on this this difference.
That's a great question, Councilwoman Freeman. So I think what we're thinking, if we want to think about it, is Old Oxford Road is a road that services the site. And then if the applicant chooses to pave a driveway up to Old Oxford Road, that's private property, but maybe that's the distinction. As of right now, that's not a road, that would just be a private drive.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill.
I essentially was just trying to figure out if they could pave all the way through, like if they could have a street actually, or the connected driveway to both roads.
Thank you, Council Member. All right, any other questions for staff before we hear the speakers on this item? All righty, if not, then we'll hear we have two people signed up to speak on this item, Celeste Ritchie and Jason Errol, who are the applicants. And we'll first begin with Ms. Ritchie. Is Ms. Ritchie available to be heard?
Hi, good evening. Yeah, this is Celeste.
Hi, how are you? Welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
Thanks so much. Hi, folks. I'm one of the property owners with my partner, Jason Errol, and just wanted to share a little bit about ourselves and the project. So we both love Durham. I moved to Durham in 2004, and it definitely feels like home. DC stole me for a little bit, but I'm back now. Probably a lot of you also know we've been volunteering in our neighborhood with the Bragtown Community Association, actually learning a lot about development over the past couple years, and just working with the community to address the needs and different challenges around development. So I guess just sharing that, as we've deepened our connection with the community over the past couple of years, we're just excited to continue those relationships and that organizing and just take responsibility to be good neighbors and good community members. For the house itself, we plan to age in place. So we're thinking of this as our forever home. We want to make sure it's ADA compliant. So we have, it's one level, there's a front ramp entrance. We're still designing it, but we want to make sure it's framed so that we can add grab bars and things like that as time goes on. We're trying to make it as energy efficient as possible, and also removing as few trees as possible. So I think that's all I wanted to share. I don't know if it's okay, but Jason can just speak from my computer as well, if that's all right.
That's fine, Ms. Ritchie. Thank you. We're glad to have you. Mr. Errol, also welcome, and you also have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Schul. Again, like Celeste said, Durham is home for me. I moved here in '93, and apart from DC stealing us away for a little while, even when we were there, we always knew we were coming back home to Durham, and that we were gonna hopefully live out the rest of our lives here. We feel really invested in Durham and in this community. We're hoping to build one house, and we do have some dreams for the other land that we own right near there. We would really love to build some affordable housing. We've been working and talking with a lot of affordable housing developers and folks with expertise in that area. So we're hoping that we can, really live our values, and instead of being like NIMBY, we're like, yes, our backyard, build affordable housing. But yeah, this is all just so, the annexation is really just so that we can connect to city water and sewer and build this home for ourselves.
Thank you very much, Mr. Errol. Let me ask now, is there anyone else that would like to be heard on this item? If there's anyone here that would like to be heard on this item, please put your name in the chat, or please raise your virtual hand. All right, I don't see anyone else. I'm going to now, therefore, declare this public hearing closed, and we will now hear any comments by the council, or if there are any other questions for staff. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let folks know I've had a couple conversations with with Celeste and Jason about the affordable housing that they hope to build on their property. And they have some really exciting ideas, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more from them when they come back to us with that project. I think it's really exciting to have, individual homeowners who are buying property in areas like this that need more affordable housing, proactively thinking about how to contribute to the community. And we don't see that very often. So I just wanted to recognize that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Any other comments, colleagues, or questions? And if not, we'll move ahead with a motion. The first motion would be to adopt an ordinance annexing 924 Old Oxford Road into the city of Durham and to enter into a utility extension agreement.
So moved.
Seconded.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Reese, seconded by Councilmember Freelon. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it and the motion passes unanimously. The second motion will be to adopt the consistency statement.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Reese, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes unanimously. And now we'll move to the third motion to adopt an ordinance amending the UDO.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, seconded by Councilmember Reese. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And I really appreciate the applicants being here. Good luck to you, and good luck to you in your affordable housing plans. All right, we'll now move to item 21, Consolidated Annexation 551 Olive Branch Road, and we'll first hear our report from staff.
Good evening. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. And Alexander Cahill here with the Planning Department. Here to present on 551 Olive Branch Road. So for this case, we did receive a request for utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, future land use map amendment, and a zoning map change from Kurt Berger of FFAC Olive Branch East. This is for an area totaling around 20 acres. The proposal is for up to 108 residential townhouse units. This is east of the intersection of Doc Nichols Road and Olive Branch Road. The annexation petition does propose a contiguous expansion of the existing city limits. As shown on the existing condition sheet of the development plan, the 20-acre parcel does include a mix of hardwoods, pines, steep slopes, stream, floodplain, wetlands, and a small portion is within the Middle Lick Creek Bottomlands Natural Heritage Area. The Natural Heritage Program did perform an ecological assessment of the site, which you can see in attachment 14. The area of development that was identified in the development plan does not include the portions of the site identified in this Middle Lick Creek Bottomlands Natural Heritage Area. Wetlands, floodplains, and steep slopes are found within proximity to the site, but not on the site itself. The proposed collector street, per the Wake Durham Collector Street Plan, does extend through some of those environmental areas. In terms of the city and county operational departments, they did review this and did not find any significant negative service delivery costs or impacts to their departments, and there were no severe operational impacts expected. It's also budget and management did a analysis and a fiscal impact analysis and found this to be a revenue positive project. There are 4 motions that are required for this application. The first is to adopt the ordinance annexing the property into the city of Durham and enter into a utility extension agreement. The second is to amend the future land use map. The third is to adopt a consistency statement. And the fourth is to adopt the zoning ordinance itself. Again, if you have questions, I'm available, and the applicant is also available to answer them here tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cahill. Colleagues, you have heard the report from staff. I'm now going to declare this public hearing open. And I first want to ask if there are any questions for staff by members of the council. All right, then we'll move on to hearing from the folks who have signed up to speak. I have 5 people who've signed up to speak on this item. All of them have signed up as proponents. I'm not sure if all of them want to speak or perhaps accompanying the applicant. So I'm going to ask Mr. Neil Ghosh. Mr. Ghosh, are you with us? Can you be heard?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Ghosh. Thank you. Mr. Ghosh, there are yourself, Jesse Hardesty, Ryan Akers, Nick Williamson, and Kurt Berger have all signed up to speak on this item as proponents. Are all of these folks members of your team?
That is correct.
And do you have any, are they all planning to speak? How are you planning to organize your presentation?
Oh, probably I will speak and they'll be available to answer questions.
All right. I see Mr. Harry Rassinen, and I hope I've got that name right, also wants to speak in opposition. And I'm now going to ask, is there anyone else here present who would like to speak on this item, either as a proponent or opponent? And if so, could you please raise your virtual hand or put your name in the chat so I can apportion time? Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item besides Mr. Rassinen and Mr. Ghosh and members of Mr. Ghosh's, the applicant's team? If so, please make yourself known now. Okay. All righty then. We'll begin with the proponents. Mr. Ghosh, how long would you say that you need for your presentation?
I won't need more than 10 minutes, probably, I don't know, closer to 5.
All righty. Go ahead, Mr. Ghosh. And then after that, Mr. Rassinen, we'll call on you for your comments as well. We appreciate you being here. All right, Mr. Ghosh, welcome, and please go ahead.
And good evening, Mayor Schul, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, and members of the City Council. As mentioned, my name is Neil Ghosh. I am an attorney at the Morningstar Law Group, located at 112 West Main Street in Durham. I'm representing the applicant for the project tonight, and Kurt Berger is on the line, as well as a couple members from McAdams, Ryan Akers, Nick Williamson, and Jessica Harthy. So thank you, Mr. Cahill, for your presentation of the case. As he mentioned, this site is just under 20 acres, and we are proposing to rezone it to a PDR 5.556 to allow for the development of 108 townhomes. Now, this project is one of 2 separate but complementary projects which include the acreage across Olive Branch Road. Unlike that section, though, this section is proposed as a PDR rather than a conservation subdivision, so it needs to be rezoned. The conservation subdivision across the street will come to you sometime in the future. Tonight, we are talking about this PDR project, but we actually started speaking with council folk prior to even submitting the rezoning application for this PDR. Probably in August of last year, the direction we got from council members we spoke with was very clear: as many townhomes as possible. So that is what we went with. This phase will consist of 108 townhomes. The community will offer 1- and 2-car garage townhomes in the low to mid 200s. This will be far more affordable than the large lot single family we would be able to build by right, and certainly allows us to provide more homes than we could by right under the current code. The project also is consistent with the vision you all have expressed about residential development in the Searles area in light of the development limitations within that basin, as outlined by staff in its presentation to you months ago. One of the limitations staff highlighted in its Searles presentation was the existence of special environmentally sensitive areas, sometimes outlined in the Natural Heritage Program. This property contains land within the Natural Heritage Program, but the initial development of the site will preserve 20% of the existing tree coverage, including the entire Lick Creek Natural Heritage Area on the property. Since receiving a vote from the Planning Commission, we have taken the time to address the concerns raised. The site will have 2 points of access on Olive Branch Road. The northern access point is proposed across property, which is not part of the rezoning, but is part of the annexation. Because no homes are being proposed there, those properties did not need to be rezoned. We have worked out with staff the potential for the new road there to create a non-conforming lot. You should be aware that we are not able to get a site or subdivision plan approved, which would create a non-conformity. So there is no risk of that actually happening. To address that concern, though, what will end up happening is that the remnant lot will be recombined with the HOA open space lot such that it will not become a non-conforming lot. And finally, there was a concern about the east-west collector street shown on the D plan by a dashed line going through the property. That street is part of a larger regional collector road for this area as outlined on the Wake Durham Collector Street plan. The portion going through the subject property is somewhat fixed because it begins at an existing right-of-way on the front of the property and must align with an existing right-of-way reservation on the adjacent property to the rear, which is being developed by Mungo Home. Now, Durham is smart, so the initial development of the community does not require the developer to build the full length of that road before it will be useful or necessary. Furthermore, if we built it out right now, it would connect to nothing. Therefore, the Corps will not issue permits for those environmental impacts, and the only portion of the road we can build for now is the portion outside those areas. So the initial development of the community will not impact the steep slope and riparian areas, and the newly built road should stop short of the 10-foot no-build area. The remainder of that facility will be built out sometime in the future once that road actually becomes viable and connects to something. On its face, this project seems to be on board with the feedback council has given on previous projects proposed in Searle. And if I'm not mistaken, this project, I believe, is the densest project you all have seen proposed in Searle. So I think that is headed in the right direction. That having been said, I mentioned previously that this project is one of two separate but complementary projects. The other project is proposed as a single-family community directly across Olive Branch Road. That project will in the future come to you as a conservation subdivision. And as a single-family community, the price points in that project will be attractive, but they will be higher than what we envisioned for this PDR. In this PDR, the townhomes will be priced in the low to mid 200s, but on the single-family side across the street, we think it probably will be in the low 300s. My client recognizes the importance of new affordable housing in Durham. We think that we hit the mark on this PDR, but because we will be unable to make proffers in relation to the future conservation subdivision across the street, we want to make a strong commitment tonight in light of that fact. Tonight, my client would like to make a commitment on this project to pay $40,000 into the city's affordable housing fund in recognition of the fact that we will be unable to make any proffers on the future conservation subdivision site. Together, we believe both projects will make an ideal new construction community, but even alone, this PDR stands on its own merit. We hope to have your support tonight for this project and on the future one as well. We have our team available to answer any questions, and thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ghosh. We will now hear from Mr. Rassinen. Madam Clerk, can you make Mr. Rassinen available to be heard?
He's been unmuted, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Mr. Rassinen, are you with us?
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yes. Thank you for being here. I hope I've got your name right. We appreciate having you. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes and look forward to hearing your comments.
Yes, sir. You got the name correct. And wanted to wish everybody a good evening and season greetings. These are my concerns about the proposed consolidated annexation of 551 Olive Branch Road. About a month ago, Mr. Berger showed up on my doorstep with no mask on, pushing papers into my face about a described need to encumber the front of my road frontage with a site distance triangle easement of 2,040 square feet in order to qualify the main access road to the site. I see no mention of this in any of the attachments, and I wonder what else is missing from this presentation. While I'm not thrilled with the proposed easement across the front of my properties and do not care to have any trees removed or fencing restrictions imposed, I would consider a trade-off if they were to put in a tree protection zone to the back of my property where the trees 6 inches or larger were preserved for 30 feet in from the property line. As the Planning Commission unanimously decided in Attachment 8E, the request to propose inconsistent density by rezoning is not appropriate for the location. Single-family structures would be more desirable and applicable to this area of the county. I'm also concerned at the impact to the wildlife, deer, owls, birds, and other animals that live in this forest area. This level of overdevelopment will force them out for sure and destroy the natural environment. Durham City proper is located 10 or more miles to the west of here. And any proposal to include Durham City jurisdiction is not justified and is an attempt to avoid Durham County rules and restrictions. I don't see how developers are able to request selective annexation into the city to skirt county ordinances in an attempt to enrich themselves by packing more customers into an area. Affordable housing or affordable single family houses can be built. They don't have to build mansions. And I don't care who has jurisdiction. It's the density of the zoning that would be concerned. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rassin, and we appreciate your being with us. Thank you so much. Let me ask now, is there anyone else who is with us that would like to be heard on this item? Are there any of the attendees here that would like to be heard? If so, could you raise your virtual hand? I don't see anyone. All right. All right, colleagues, you have heard the members of the public who have spoken tonight, and now I'm going to ask if there are any comments or questions by members of the council. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question for Mr. Rassin. And specifically, what county rules are they trying to circumvent? Help me out with that.
Madam Clerk, can you make Mr. Rassin available to be heard?
He is, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, the rezoning would increase the density inconsistent with the surrounding area.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rassin. Councilmember Reese, any other questions or comments? All right. Colleagues, any questions or comments for staff or the applicant? So I have a couple. For Mr. Ghosh, why wasn't the site access issues settled before coming to the Planning Commission? Can you talk about that?
So yeah, sure. It was. It just wasn't very evident. So as you know, annexations don't go to the Planning Commission. So on the zoning map, typically when you do a rezoning with an annexation, the annexation boundary follows the rezoning boundary. In this particular case, that didn't happen, and that is because the area over which the second access point is proposed, we're not building any houses there, so we didn't rezone it. So it is included in the annexation. It was included in the annexation at the time the item went to the Planning Commission, but those items wouldn't have been known to the Planning Commission.
So, and you've explained this, and so I think I'll ask Mr. Cahill this question. Mr. Cahill, can you explain to me the situation with the as you understand it, and this was addressed somewhat in the staff report as well, with the second access point and what the complication is there?
Yes, I can add as much context as possible. So if they build more than 90 units, they'll have to add a second access point. That was, it's 108 units that are being proposed. So that would, anything over the 90 would trigger that second access point. They can't commit to elements that are off the development plan. So we can't assess whether that site access will serve the area if it's on another parcel. I think that was one of the things that came up with Planning Commission that was a little bit confusing in terms of the site access. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to add anything to it.
Well, let me just ask again, Mr. Cahill. So just to make sure I understand, the applicant owns the property which would be annexed but not rezoned, where the second site access point would be if they were to build more than 90 townhomes. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm not sure of the ownership structure, but that would be correct.
It's under contract, Mayor Schul. It's not presently owned by the applicant, but yes, I think your basic premise is correct.
And thank you, Mr. Ghosh. And then, and Mr. Cahill, the applicant has said that in order to build above the 90 townhome limit, they would need the second access point. And it would be my understanding, should they not be able to arrange for the second access point, that they would still be able to develop, but only up to 90 townhomes.
That is correct, Mayor Schul.
Great. Okay, my second question is regarding Mr. Rassinen's comments, and I'd like to address this to Mr. Ghosh or to Mr. Berger. You heard what Mr. Rassinen said about being approached concerning his home and an easement. Could you discuss that? I'm not sure I understood that, and I would like to hear, you could see he was concerned both by the approach and by the way in which he was approached. And so could you comment on that, Mr. Ghosh or Mr.
Sure, sure. And I can, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to speak to this. I had met Mr. Rassinen, he's our neighbor. I had met him maybe a year ago, quite a while ago. We had before we moved in, some heavy equipment to do some clearing for some drilling and soils investigation, things like that. So I knocked on his door and told him what we were going to do. I thought we had a decent relationship. The existing unnamed road right-of-way is the 60-foot right-of-way, basically at the intersection. DOT is asking us if we can secure from that resident in that property a site easement. So I had some sample documents drafted up, and I went to his house and knocked on his door and wanted to discuss it with him. I apologize. I made a mistake and didn't wear my mask from my truck to the front door of the car. I was standing in his front yard on his stoop. I clearly made the mistake. I am not an aggressive person, and I didn't shove anything in his face. I did leave him with some documents so he would have an example. He declined at that time he declined to give us the easement, and I understand. And I asked him with my car, can I leave these documents with you? And that's how it went down. I'm not an aggressive person. I have no need. This is the second time we've met each other. And so I thought we at least had an introduction previously. And I sincerely apologize for any offense or certainly wearing my mask. I made a mistake, and I apologize for it. I wear a mask and all the time, and I just hopped out of the truck and it didn't get it right. There wasn't an aggressive, I didn't shove anything anywhere. And, I was reviewing, again, it was a sample of a previous project, of an example that I got from McAdams of another project, so he could see exactly what I was asking for.
And
Thank you,
Mayor
Mr. Berger.
Schul,
Yes, Mr. Gosh.
yeah, and just for the record, that was Mr. Kurt Berger. He is the applicant or representative of the applicant. And I did want to say, I think part of your question was the nature of that easement. It's a site distance triangle easement, which NCDOT asked us to pursue. I think maybe the obvious question after that is, do we need that easement? It would be nice to have it, but the project can proceed without it.
So Mr. Rassinen's property then is near the intersection of Doc Nichols and Olive Branch Road. Is that correct?
He is at the, if you will, the T-bone of that intersection. So if you drove straight, you would drive into his front yard when you came.
Why
up
do
to
you need that? Why is that? Why did you want that easement?
DOT was asking if we could get it. So when people pulled up to turn right out of this community, out of that entrance, they could be able to see cars. It's very close. There's some trees. I don't believe that I believe you can see it, but they don't. I mean, in fact, you can see, but they want to have an easement just to protect the drivers in the future, I guess.
Yeah, so you don't really know if you can see there or not yet because you don't have that road there, right?
Correct. We had it surveyed, sir.
Okay.
We had it surveyed, and it's the eyeball test. You stand there in line on the survey and you can see the farthest stake. So it generally indicates that there isn't a major obstruction in the way. DOT likes to have their triangle distance easements.
Yeah. Is Mr. Judge on with us? I see he is. Mr. Judge, can I ask you to comment, when DOT asked for an easement like this, a site triangle, I believe it was referred to, can you discuss that a little bit? And do you agree with the applicant's
Yes, so Bill Judge
assertion that it's not necessary?
Yeah, Bill Judge, Transportation. Well, I don't know whether or not an easement on the resident's property is necessary or not. I will say that having adequate site distance is absolutely necessary for the new street connection. So that is a common thing that that either our department or in this case NCDOT looks at before they would approve sort of a street connection, almost a fourth leg of the intersection to Olive Branch, Doc Nichols. It's offset slightly, primarily because that's where the right of way is. It doesn't line up perfect, but as the applicant said, that would be for vehicles exiting the site as they come up to Olive Branch so that they can look to the left. For vehicles that are headed north towards NC 98, whether they need to make a left turn or a right turn, you need to be able to see an adequate distance to the left to see oncoming traffic. So typically what can happen is that if the property owner is unwilling to grant an easement, they can go out in the field and verify whether or not there's adequate site distance within the existing right of way. Probably it was primarily based on mapping or drawings that the applicant had provided. I don't know exactly what they provided to NCDOT that they were concerned about that. So,
Mr. Judge, would NCDOT have to pass on this sight lines at some point, or is it just the applicant gets to decide that?
Well, I mean, in order for NCDOT to approve the street connection, new connection, the applicant will have to show that there's adequate site distance, either inside the right of way or that they have an agreement from the property owner to keep that area clear so that they don't install a fence or some other measure that would restrict site distance in the future.
Okay, thank you. And while you're here, Mr. Judge, you heard the characterization by Mr. Ghosh of the situation with the road, the collector road that is planned to go across this property. How would you describe that situation? And what thoughts do you have to offer us about that?
Yes. So, I mean, it is on our adopted collector street plan. So they are accommodating that in with the development plan. I think it is a bit challenging, some of the environmental features in this area and the likelihood of whether or not the property, in this case, immediately to the east, whether or not they will be able to get the easements and the permits from in order to extend across that culvert. Short of it being some sort of city initiated. I mean, in an ideal non-environmental situation, we definitely would want the collector street, but we have to sort of balance the environmental features and as well as the connectivity.
Is that our judgment, or is that the judgment of will that be the judgment of the property owner?
It's a combination of our judgment as well as the environmental regulatory agencies into showing that the need for that connection with the development.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Judge. Colleagues, forgive my lengthy questioning there, and I'm going to ask if there are any other questions now. Mr. Cahill, do you have some comments to add as well on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the proffer because staff was not aware of that until City Council. The $40,000 Affordable Housing Fund contribution, we just want to clarify that's what the applicant is intending to proffer, and if so, they will need to complete a consent form to authorize that.
Yes, and that is the intent to proffer that, and I believe I have the form in my inbox.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. All right, colleagues, other questions or comments at this time? All right, I don't see any, and so I'm now going to declare this public hearing closed, and the matter is before the council. And are there any comments that colleagues would like to make? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your line of question and the clarity that the applicant and the neighbor have provided. I unfortunately cannot be supportive at this time of moving forward. I think there's a number of concerns, including, I guess, the proffer and the lack of a commitment on the easement that specifically are what raises immediately, but there are a number of concerns, especially around the environmental features. So I will not be moving forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Councilmember Freelon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just kind of wanted to ask my colleagues, what they think. When I read the Planning Commission notes, there was a lot of confusion about the access points, which I appreciated your rigorous line of questioning there, Mr. Mayor. I had some of the same questions, but some of the other concern was about the awkward juxtaposition of, this very dense thing in this area where that's kind of that's not the standard in this area. And I know that density is important for the housing crisis and just having good housing stock. And I can't remember what the price point was. I think it was low to mid 200s. Is that right? Yeah. So, I know that's important, but I was hoping to hear from some colleagues about the thoughts about the, that juxtaposition of this very dense thing in the Surrey Basin, relative to what else is around it.
Thank you very much, council member. That's an important question. Any colleagues would like to comment on that? Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, happy to share some general thoughts. So what I understand is happening in the Searles Basin based on our last presentation from staff is a lot of development that is going to largely be residential because of environmental constraints, and is largely going to be low density. This project is, I think, low medium density according to our scale. So I think a lot of times when we talk about density, there's a tendency to exaggerate how dense something really is. Townhouse developments aren't really that dense. They can't be. I think that they're probably, these sorts of developments in the Searles Basin are as dense as I feel it's responsible to be based on the environmental constraints that were communicated to us by staff. And that my main concern with Searles going in was that we didn't really have a plan for, where to make the neighborhood more cohesive. Where are the commercial areas going to be? Where could people maybe build an office so that someone who lives out here doesn't have to drive into downtown or drive into RTP to get to a job or to get to a grocery store? And I still have those concerns. So I think they were significantly mitigated by the staff presentation that made it pretty clear that this area, because of the environmental issues, is going to end up being mostly residential, and that there's really the only options are develop it at low to low medium density residential or don't develop it at all. Given that we are in pretty significant need of additional housing, I think it makes sense to develop it. And I feel like there's always this tension between, the question of density being more density is more affordable and more sustainable, but that also we're dealing with suburban areas that don't have transit, and we're cutting down trees to build the houses. And also we have a housing crisis, and also we don't have a lot of available land in the community anymore. I mean, I feel like these decisions get pretty complicated. Where I tend to land most of the time is on the affordability question. Because I feel like that's the most urgent crisis that we face. And that a lot of the other issues can be mitigated. Like, we can put transit to this area when we get to transit supportive density of population, which is another reason to go ahead and build more dense housing in these kinds of areas than to build single family. I think that townhomes are not they're not the greatest, but they're better than these very low density single family developments. And I don't think we're going to get any better density in Searles. And I don't know that it would be environmentally responsible to put more density in Searles. So that's kind of how I'm approaching the area right now. And I'm looking forward to having the small area plan so that we can figure out where there could be small commercial nodes so that people could walk to a corner store to, get a gallon of milk and not have to drive as much, or where there could be trails for people to be able to walk and bike. But it's hard to plan all of that in advance of knowing that there's going to be any development out there. So we're kind of in this catch-22 all the time. I feel like that was really long, but there's a lot of complications. Overall, I wish we could do different things, but there's so many economic constraints, and the fact that we're dealing with profit motivated entities who are building most of these products. Like, I feel like we're just having to make the best choices out of a lot of not great options.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll just say, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, you're the shortest winded of this pretty long-winded group, and so you get to talk as long as you want. Okay.
Happy to oblige every once in a while.
All right. Colleagues, thank you for that. Other comments or questions at this time? I do have one more question for Mr. Cahill. Mr. Cahill, this property has the access point, or potentially two access points, out onto Olive Branch Road. But between Olive Branch Road and most of the property is a series of, is a row of single family homes, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments, colleagues? I'll just make one comment, which is that I think that I really appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's really, I thought, masterful kind of explanation of the issues. And in this case, I think that I find myself sometimes at odds with the Planning Commission on this issue of whether or not density next to a bunch of single family residents, they usually think that's bad. I usually think that's good if it's an area like this where it's just, we have so many single family residents. I think it's really good to have some variety in housing in an area like this where you can have some differences in price points. You know, you can have some less expensive housing. And so I just think that that's a tension that we have. What worried me about this, and I feel a lot more comfortable now, and I know worried the Planning Commission as well, as you said, Councilmember Freelon, is the kind of situation with these entrance points. I am satisfied by staff's explanation that the second entrance point is not able to be satisfactorily developed, as Mr. Ghosh has indicated that he thought it would be, that this would limit the number of townhouses to 90, and you know, within our ordinance. So I was satisfied by that. Okay, any other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay. Then I'm going to ask for a motion on this. The first motion that we would need is to adopt an ordinance annexing 555 Olive Branch Road and entering into utility extension agreement.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
No.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
No.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And the motion passes 5-2. The second motion will be to adopt a resolution amending the future land use from low density residential to low medium density residential and open space and recreation.
Move as stated.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Councilmember Freelon. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Nay.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and the motion passes 5-2. And the third motion will be to adopt a consistency statement. Is there a motion to adopt the consistency statement?
Move to adopt consistency.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Councilmember Caballero. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Nay.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and the motion passes 5-2. And the final motion will be to adopt an ordinance amending the UDO.
Move as read.
Second.
Seconded.
Moved by Councilmember Middleton, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Nay.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes 5-2. I want to thank the applicant, and it looks like we have Gwen there. Good to see Gwen. I want to thank the applicant for being here. I want to thank Mr. Rassinen for being here. We appreciate you. These are always difficult questions and good arguments on both sides. So thank you very much. All right, we'll now move to the final
public hearing item tonight, which is consolidated annexation item 4115 Angier Avenue. And first we'll hear the report from staff.
Good evening, Mayor Schul and honorable council members and Mayor Pro Tem. I'm Grace Smith. I'm with the Planning Department. I'll be presenting this case, 4115 Angier Avenue Consolidated Item. A request for a utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, future land use map amendment, and zoning map change was received from Nate Bueller with Cambridge Properties. The site includes 3 parcels totaling 20.35 acres. The applicant proposes to change the zoning from commercial general and residential RS20 to residential suburban multifamily with a development plan. This site is located in the suburban development tier. The portion of the site adjacent to US 70 is currently zoned commercial general. The remainder is zoned RS20. The proposed zoning is not consistent with the future land use map designation of commercial, but the applicant is seeking a FLUM amendment to low medium density residential, which would be consistent with the rezoning request. Staff determines that this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and applicable policies and ordinances. Key committed elements include a maximum of 115 townhouse units, monetary proffers to dedicated housing fund and Durham Public Schools, right-of-way dedications, reservations, and a center turn lane. City and county operational departments such as police, fire, and EMS have reviewed this request and have not identified any significant negative service delivery costs or impacts. There are no severe operational impacts expected on city departments. This case was originally heard at the June 2nd Planning Commission meeting. At that meeting, the motion to recommend approval failed 1-12. The applicant made additional commitments and was asked to be reheard by Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reheard the request and voted to recommend approval by a vote of 7-5 on September 22nd, 2020. 4 motions are required for this application. The first is to adopt an ordinance annexing the property and entering into a utility extension agreement. The second is to amend the future land use map. The third is to adopt a consistency statement. And the fourth is to adopt a zoning ordinance. The applicant is on the line and has a presentation. And I'm happy to share that when necessary. Thank you, and staff and the applicant are here and available for questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. Colleagues, you have heard the report from staff. Before I declare this public hearing open, however, you all will remember that at our last meeting, I committed that every 2 hours, we would give our closed captioners a break. And I'm going to keep that commitment. We appreciate so much the work that they do. It's very hard to do it. And they need a break. So I'm going to just put us on pause for just 3 or 4 minutes and give our closed captioners a break, and then we'll be back with the public hearing. So it's a great time to go get yourself a hard-boiled egg.
I'd have to hard boil it though. It's going to take more than 5 minutes.
That was truly random. Sounds like someone's actually boiling that egg.
Hey, Carmisha. Thank you.
All right, we will get started in just, I'll give it one more minute and then we'll get going again. All right, colleagues. Thank you all for supporting our closed captioners, and we thank them for their work. Ms. Smith, thank you so much for your presentation. This public hearing is now open. You've heard the report from staff, and I want to first ask if there are any questions for Ms. Smith by members of the council. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Ms. Smith, good evening. Good to see you. You made I think you made a representation that the applicant is making proffers in the Affordable Housing Fund and to the school system. Did you have those amounts? I didn't recall reading them in the packet. Have they specified amounts?
Sure. Let me look on the development plan quick.
Okay. And if I missed it, forgive me. My numbers are running together. And if you need to pull it up, I don't need to hold up the hearing just for that. You can just give it to me later or bring it back. And Mr. Mayor, if you want to proceed.
And I'll be glad to do that. And it might even be covered in the applicant's presentation. I'm sorry, I wrote down some other proffers and didn't write that down.
That's okay.
Of course.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Uh-huh.
We will get that tonight, though. Thank you, council member. All right. Other questions for Ms. Smith? Okay, then we will now hear from members of the public who are here to comment on this item. I have here 4 people, Nate Bueller, Bob Mishler, Patrick Biker, and Jamal Levan. And all of them are listed as proponents. I want to know, let's see, I see Mr. Harry Rassanen and Mr. Ken Irvin are both here. Mr. Rassanen, could you raise your hand or put in the chat whether or not you would also like to speak on item 22? And also Mr. Irvin, if you all would like to speak on, okay, Mr. Rassanen says no. Thank you, Mr. Rassanen. And Mr. Irvin, would you like to speak on item 22? If so, could you put that in the chat? Thank you, Mr. Irvin. I liked it in the old days where we would be in a council chambers together and I could find that out in some, but we are where we are. Okay, thank you all very much. Mr. Biker, are the members who are otherwise signed up to speak members of the team of the applicant?
Yes, Mayor Schul, this is Patrick Biker. Mayor Schul, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. I'm here tonight representing Cambridge Properties. The other gentlemen that you've referenced are members of the ownership and our neighborhood outreach team. We've been working together on this project for quite a few months now. Am I correct in understanding that there's no one from the public who's in opposition to this item, Mayor Schul?
That's my understanding. I don't see anyone here else who is planning to speak, Mr. Biker. Yes, that's right. Are you planning to be the, are you planning to do the speaking for the applicant?
Yes, Mayor Schul.
All righty. How much time do you think you'll need, Mr. Biker?
Well, we had a fairly lengthy PowerPoint ready to go, but in light of the fact that y'all have a work session tomorrow and it always feels later than it really is this time of year. So in light of a 10-minute PowerPoint, Would like to just call to the attention of the council the comments by Planning Commissioner Tom Miller, noting that we had a 7-5 recommendation for approval. I would like to briefly address Councilmember Middleton. He asked a question that I need to get my reading glasses on to answer, but the answer is $20,000 contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund and $2,500 for Durham Public Schools, even though this, if I understood the staff report correctly, this project actually does not add any school children, but because this site is so close to Bethesda Elementary, we did want to make a contribution. So in light of what was presented by Assistant Director Smith in the planning staff report and the comments of Commissioner Miller, we, rather than take up your time this evening, we'd just like to answer any questions that you may have and respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Biker. Colleagues, are there any questions or comments for the applicant at this time? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Patrick, good evening. Good to see you, hear you.
Yes, sir.
What are the anticipated price points of the townhomes?
Mid twos, probably starting around the 240s and up.
Okay.
So what we did is there's a committed element that states the size of the townhomes will range from 1,600 to I believe 2,400, and that provides for our range of price points, probably starting in the 240s.
Thanks, Patrick. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome, council member.
Thank you, council member. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Biker or the team at this time, his team? All right, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure that I note that, again, I know that we are cognizant, but the public may not be, that there is no way that we can predict what a price point will be. We can give a guesstimation. I mean, it is based on the market. And so just noting that when we talk about affordable housing, I think it's important to make sure that we do clarify that these are guesstimations, they're not actual.
Thank you, council member. Any other comments or questions for the applicant at this time? All righty, seeing none, then I'm going to declare this public hearing closed and the matters back before the council. If anyone has any comments, I'm happy to have them, or would also accept a motion. The first motion would be to adopt an ordinance annexing 4115 Angier Avenue into the city and to authorize the city manager and to enter into a utility extension agreement.
Move to adopt the ordinance.
All right, I see some hands that want to make comments, I think.
Oh.
But no, that's okay. Let's do that first, Councilmember, then we'll come back to you.
Sure.
Councilmember Middleton. Yeah, my bad.
No worries.
Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to appreciate the applicant for their work on this. I appreciate staff, the work they put in bringing it to us like this. I was really impressed with the applicant's persistence at the Planning Commission in working to address the very significant concerns raised by commission members the first time the case came before them. I think it's clear when you look at the written comments of the commissioners the second time around, the most recent set of comments, you'll see that that they really appreciated the commitment to grappling with the very real issues, some of the design elements, some of the things that Commissioner Miller often raises. And so I really appreciated that. On the surface, this seems a little bit like the olive branch matter that we just passed, but I think there are some key differences. First and foremost, there were some environmental factors with regard to the olive branch site that made me very uncomfortable. And I know that Councilmember Freeman spoke to that, especially with the level of development that has been approved for that site. But this particular site doesn't have that kind of concern for me. There are some buffered streams on one side of the property, but it doesn't look to me as though this will be impactful there. And I just really appreciated Commissioner Miller's discussion of the way that the developer modified the proposal in coming back to the Planning Commission. You know, so often we see developers get a negative recommendation at the Planning Commission and they just decide, well, we're just going to go to the City Council and they'll get them to approve it. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. But I think the process works better for us if the Planning Commission gets the developer's best effort, because that's when we get a recommendation from the Planning Commission that is the most meaningful. If a project has changed so much from the time that the Planning Commission saw it and the time we saw it, it makes all the work the Planning Commission put into reviewing that really not particularly helpful to us. And that's the reason they exist, is to inform the decision, the merits decision that we have to make on this. And I was convinced by Commissioner Miller's remarks, despite the reservation that a number of planning commissioners continue to have about the project, I was convinced by Commissioner Miller's comments here that this project, while not perfect, will fit in with the surrounding area and will be a benefit. And I'll be supporting the measure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Council Member. And I believe Councilmember Freelon also, no, okay. Is there anyone else who would like to comment before the motion? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Councilmember Reese's comments, and just will note that it's important to distinguish the differences. And I apologize, I was just going to go ahead because of the lateness of the hour. But I also note that in this context of the comments from our commissioners, just noting that the concerns around traffic and, making sure that folks are safe, they're going to continue to raise up, and they're going to be the way that that's on us, and making sure that we move forward with our small area designing or small area planning. And so I just wanted to just make sure I make that very clear point, that supporting this moving forward is not in spite of that lack of having that planning in place. And so just noting that I will be supportive, noting all of the things that Councilmember Reese noted as far as the sensitivity of this area, but or the lack of sensitivity in this area. But I do want to note that the environmental sensitivity in the previous case was different from this one, and that moving forward, we will have to make sure that we do address it, because these cases are going to continue to come at each council meeting. And I'm sure it's fine for developers to move forward with a vote of 5-2 or 6-1 or what have you. But I do think that it's a disservice to our community to not have a plan in place. And we're going to continue to move forward without that. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. All right, colleagues, any other comments? All right, then I will ask Councilmember Middleton. Go back to you, sir, for the motion.
Yes, sir. Reinstating previous motion.
Second.
That would be the annexation of 4115 Angier Avenue to the City of Durham and the enter into the utility extension agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Reese. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it and the motion passes unanimously. The second will be to adopt a resolution amending the future land use plan to low, medium density residential.
So moved.
Move the state. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Reese, seconded by Councilmember Middleton. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. This third motion will be to adopt a consistency statement.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Moved by Councilmember Reese, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeland.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes unanimously. And finally, the motion would be needed to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Reese, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freelon,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. I want to thank the applicant for being here today and for, I want to wish you all luck in developing this project. We trust you'll do a great job on it for the city. All right, colleagues, I did pull item 1 and I'll bring that item back to the council at the appropriate time. And then the other thing I wanted to just remind everyone is, of course, we have a work session tomorrow. And it'll be wonderful. And I also want to just remind you all, or let you know if you haven't seen it yet, that there's an email in your inbox discussing a couple of options for a special meeting of the council on either just January 12th or 14th in the morning to discuss to make a decision on going forward on our choice for a contractor to help us search for our city manager. And so please look for that email and let the city clerk know which of those dates, whether one or both of those is okay for you. I know we've already heard from a couple council members. I know Councilmember Reese, Councilmember Freeman at least have responded. So if you all could respond, that'd be great. So we can see if any of those dates works for all of us. And if not, we'll find a time that does. Thank you. Thank you so much, council members. Thank you for everybody that hung with us tonight, our wonderful staff who are still with us, and we appreciate you so much. Yes, council member.
You pulled item number 1. Are we gonna take some kind of action to defer consideration until a later time?
I don't know that we need to do that, but let me ask the attorney. Madam Attorney, I pull item 1, which is an appointment to the RDU Airport Authority, which is an appointment that I make. Do we need to have some sort of action to defer it, or can I just simply bring it back to the council at the appropriate time? What do we need to do?
This is not a council appointment, it's just a mayoral appointment, correct?
But yeah, but the council concurs traditionally.
It probably would do I don't know procedurally, Mr. Mayor, the exact answer to that without researching it, but it would probably do no harm for you just to bring it back to the council at a later date.
I see Ashley Wyatt has commented to refer it back. So I'm going to ask that it be referred back, I guess in this case to me, since it's my appointment. And I have no problem having a vote on that if people would prefer. So why don't we have a vote on that if that would heighten everyone's comfort level. Yeah.
More than a legal issue, I think this is a parliamentary issue. And insofar as this falls totally within your purview, I'm comfortable by unanimous consent, just allowing you the matter to be referred back to you without any objection. Unanimous consent for you to just do that. I don't think we need a vote.
I see some thumbs. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, council member. Thank you, Madam Attorney. All right, colleagues, thank you so much. I would say happy holidays to everyone, but we're going to see you tomorrow, so we'll get another chance to do it. But it's always good to be with you.
It is winter solstice. Happy winter solstice.
Yes, happy winter solstice. Shortest day of the year. All righty. Thank you so much, everybody. And let's go out and show an affirming flame.
Yes.
See you all tomorrow.
Good night.
This
Good night,
meeting is
everyone.
adjourned.